Welcome to The Docket. I'm your host, Corey Snow. After his indictment in Georgia for his part in the attempts to overturn the 2020 Georgia presidential election and send false slates of electors to disrupt the counting of electoral votes, Jeff Clark attempted to file for an emergency order that would have removed the case from Georgia to federal jurisdiction, where he planned to argue that he was acting under color of his role as a member of the Trump administration and was therefore not subject to prosecution for his actions. He also asked for a temporary stay of any arrest if he did not turn himself in for arraignment to Fulton County by Friday, August 25th. In an order filed on August 23rd, a federal judge in the Southern District of Georgia flatly denied the request. This episode is an audio narration of the order denying that request. In the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, Atlanta Division. The State of Georgia v. Jeffrey Bossert Clark, Defendant. Civil Action File Number 1:23-CV-03721-SCJ. Notice of Removal of Fulton County Superior Court Indictment Number 23-SC188947. Order. This matter appears before the court on Defendant Jeffrey Clark's emergency motion to confirm applicability of automatic stay under 28 U.S.C. Section 1446D, or the triggering of the stay in 28 U.S.C. Section 1455B5, or both, or in the alternative, for an administrative stay. Having received the Fulton County District Attorney's response in opposition, and upon its own review of the motion, the court denies Clark's motion for an emergency stay. On August 22, 2023, Clark filed a notice of removal of the criminal prosecution against him and of the Fulton County Special Purpose Grand Jury proceedings. Attached to the notice of removal is the indictment that was returned by a Fulton County regular grand jury on August 14, 2023. In his notice of removal, Clark argues that this court has jurisdiction over these state proceedings because he is a federal officer. Clark also indicates that he removes his case as both a civil and a criminal matter, or as a criminal-civil hybrid matter under both 28 U.S.C. Section 1446 for civil cases originating in state courts and Section 1455 for criminal cases originating in state courts. He asserts that the civil portion of this case arises from the special grand jury proceedings instigated as an investigative tool under OCGA Section 1512-100 at sequence prior to the regular grand jury directly issuing the indictment against him. Simultaneously with his notice of removal, Clark filed the instant emergency motion to stay the state's criminal proceedings, namely to enjoin, quote, any attempted issuance or execution of arrest warrants, end quote. Clark contends that the stay is appropriate first, as a civil matter, under Section 1446D's automatic stay of the underlying state court proceedings, and under Section 1455B5 as a criminal matter over which the court can assume jurisdiction. Alternatively, Clark asks the court to issue a temporary administrative stay to maintain the status quo while the court decides these issues. The court denies Clark's emergency motion. Clark seeks a stay that, quote, would run against the underlying Fulton County proceedings, including any attempted issuance or execution of arrest warrants, end quote. The instant Fulton County proceedings, including any arrest warrant against Clark, arise from the criminal indictment returned by the regular grand jury, not the special purpose grand jury. See Kennerly v. Georgia, reviewing Georgia law and stating that, quote, there is no language in the Georgia Code sections granting a special grand jury the power to indict following its investigation, end quote. Clark admits, and the court agrees, that the indictment presents, quote, plainly a criminal case, end quote. Under the statutory scheme for removal, however, criminal prosecutions are removed to federal courts only under 28 U.S.C. Section 1455. As the ongoing Fulton County criminal proceedings and forthcoming arrest warrant arise from the criminal indictment in a criminal action, Section 1455 governs. And Section 1455 specifically indicates that until the federal court assumes jurisdiction over a state criminal case, the state court retains jurisdiction over the prosecution and the proceedings despite the notice of the removal. Footnote number 2. As a general matter, a federal court assuming jurisdiction over a state criminal prosecution follows the statutory requirements in 28 U.S.C. Section 1455b, which requires determining if summary remand is appropriate and holding an evidentiary hearing to assess federal jurisdiction. The court has not made these determinations or held an evidentiary hearing and thus denies as premature Clark's request to assume jurisdiction under Section 1455b5. Indeed, the court's research has found that Section 1455b3 has been followed even in cases where a criminal defendant who had filed a notice of removal in federal court was required to proceed to trial in the state court. Accordingly, the court denies Clark's emergency motion for a stay of the state's criminal proceedings, inclusive of the alternative motion for an administrative stay. The court specifically finds that, pursuant to 28 U.S.C. Section 1455b3, the Fulton County proceedings remain ongoing at this time, as there has been no triggering of a stay under 28 U.S.C. Section 1455b5. Moreover, the court denies Clark's request to enter an administrative stay because Clark did not cite any authority for the court to enter a temporary administrative stay. Various abstention doctrines and principles of federalism counsel against a federal court entering a stay of a state court's judicial proceedings, and Section 1455's statutory framework indicates the Fulton County proceedings should presently continue despite the notice of removal. Finally, at this time, the court declines to comment further on Clark's arguments relating to the purported civil removal of the special grand jury proceedings or the consequences of such determination under 28 U.S.C. Section 1446. Footnote 3. The court acknowledges, however, that the district attorney disputes that the special grand jury proceedings were civil in nature. It is so ordered this 23rd day of August, 2023, signed Honorable Steve C. Jones, United States District Judge. This concludes this episode of The Docket. I hope you enjoyed this audio version of Jeff Clark's motion to remove his case being denied. For updates on the docket, please visit docketpod.com/site or find us on Threads and Instagram as DocketPod. Please consider subscribing to the docket and supporting my Patreon at patreon.com/docketpod. Thank you.